What would you think if I told you that 3 words, spoken once, without drama, without rage, could dismantle a man's entire identity? Not because they were violent. Not because they were hidden in a scream. But because they were simple. Final. Utterly free of need. She looked at him, not with anger, not with sorrow, but with the quiet certainty of a woman who has finished her internal journey, and said, "I don't need you." And he collapsed. Not physically. Not with tears at first. But inwardly, where the psyche lives, where the ego is built on invisible foundations. For 7 days, he did not eat properly. He did not sleep. He cancelled meetings. He stopped answering friends. He sat in silence, not thinking, just feeling, a hollow ache in the center of his chest, as if something essential had been removed not from his life, but from his soul. By the 3rd day, he began to dream of his mother, her back turned, her voice distant. By the 7th, he wept, not for her, not for the relationship, but for the sudden, unbearable awareness that he had been depending on her to feel like a man. This is not a story of heartbreak. This is a case study in the unconscious. I have spent my life mapping the hidden forces that drive human behavior, the shadow, the anima, the ego's desperate need to survive. And I tell you this, the most transformative moments in a man's life do not come from success, from praise, from conquest. They come from loss, specifically, the loss of a woman who was never truly his to begin with. When a woman speaks those 3 words, not as a threat, but as a truth, she is not rejecting him. She is withdrawing her projection. She is ceasing to be the mirror in which he saw himself as powerful, needed, complete. And without that mirror, he is lost. You see, every man carries an unconscious belief, I am only valuable if I am needed. This is not taught in schools. It is woven into the fabric of the male psyche, by fathers who equated worth with work, by mothers who leaned on sons too early, by a world that rewards performance over presence. And so he builds his life around being indispensable. To his job. To his family. To her. But when she steps away, not with fury, not with bargaining, but with stillness, he is forced into the one place he has spent his life avoiding, aloneness without purpose. This is not punishment. This is initiation. And it is rare. Because most women do not reach this point. Most women fight. They beg. They cry. They try to fix. They say, if you leave, I'll die, not knowing that this only feeds his ego. He is needed, even in destruction. But the woman who says, I don't need you, is different. She has already died, symbolically. She has descended into her own shadow. She has faced the fear of being unloved, unwanted, alone. And she has risen. Not healed, transformed. And when she speaks, it is not from emotion. It is from being. This is what triggers the breakdown. Not the words. The state behind them. The unshakable calm. The absence of fear. The energy of a woman who no longer requires his validation to exist. Men are not afraid of strong women. They are afraid of free women. Because a free woman cannot be earned. She cannot be won. She chooses, or she doesn't. And when she doesn't, something ancient in him stirs. The anima, long buried beneath logic and ambition, begins to wake. It speaks in dreams. In moods. In inexplicable sorrow. It says, you have been asleep. You have been living through her. Now you must live through yourself. This is not love. This is individuation. And it is brutal. Because to become whole, he must first fall apart. He must grieve not her absence, but his own dependency. He must face the truth, he was not loving her. He was using her to avoid feeling the emptiness inside. But if he survives the 7 days, if he does not run back to distraction, to another woman, to work, then something rare occurs. He begins to see, not her, himself. And she? She does not watch. She does not wait. She walks forward, into her own light. Because the woman who has faced her shadow no longer needs a man to tell her she is whole. The silence after she spoke was not empty. It was full, charged with the weight of 1,000 unspoken years, of feminine truths buried beneath centuries of compromise, of a soul that had finally stopped apologizing for taking up space. In that silence, the air itself changed. It thickened. It hummed. It became a presence more real than words. And in that presence, he felt something he had never known, the unbearable lightness of not being needed. This is where most stories end, with his breakdown, with her departure, with the drama of loss. But this is not a story about endings. It is about what happens after the ego shatters. Because when a man truly confronts the void left by a woman who no longer depends on him, he does not simply miss her. He begins to remember. Not her smile, not her touch, but a feeling from long ago, before performance, before masks, before he learned to trade love for approval. He remembers the boy who just wanted to be held, not praised. The child who needed safety, not success. And in that memory, the anima, the inner feminine, stirs like a dormant river beginning to flow. You do not create this kind of transformation with arguments. You do not force it with ultimatums. It arises only when a woman reaches the point where her own existence is no longer negotiable. When she stops trying to be understood, when she ceases to explain, when she simply is, whole, complete, unshaken, then and only then does the unconscious of the man begin to awaken. This is not manipulation. This is alignment. This is the natural law of the psyche. What is whole attracts what is broken, not to fix it, but to reveal it. He does not weep because he has lost her. He weeps because he has never truly seen her. All the years they were together, he was not loving her, he was loving the version of her that fit his needs. The woman who soothed his anxiety. The one who celebrated his wins. The one who made him feel like a protector, a provider, a hero. But the real her, the one who sits in stillness at dawn, who speaks to the moon, who carries grief like an old friend, she was invisible to him. Because to see her would have required him to stop performing. And he could not afford that. But now, in the silence, he sees her. Not with his eyes. With his soul. And in seeing her, he sees himself, not as he wished to be, but as he is, a man built on sand, a fortress with no foundation, a king ruling a kingdom that exists only in his mind. The realization does not come as anger. It comes as grief. A deep, quiet sorrow for the life unlived, for the tenderness buried beneath ambition, for the years spent chasing validation when all he ever wanted was to be loved for simply being. This is the shadow work that no journal prompt can force. This is the breakdown that no podcast can simulate. This is the death of the persona, the false self, and the first tremor of the true self beneath. And it was triggered by 3 words. Not shouted. Not weaponized. But spoken from a place so deep, so still, that they carried the resonance of truth itself. I don't need you. They were not a rejection. They were a liberation. For both of them. Because she did not say them to hurt him. She said them because she had finally stopped hurting herself. She had spent years shrinking, softening her voice, hiding her intensity, dimming her power, so he would not feel threatened. She had played small so he could feel big. And in doing so, she betrayed not him, but her own soul. The moment she stopped, the moment she reclaimed her fullness, the dynamic collapsed. Not because she destroyed it. Because it could not survive in the presence of her authenticity. This is the forbidden law of feminine power. A man does not fall in love with a woman who needs him. He falls in love with a woman who doesn't, but chooses him anyway. And when she chooses from wholeness, not lack, the relationship is no longer a dependency. It becomes a sacred exchange. A meeting of equals. A union of 2 souls who do not complete each other, but witness each other. But most men are not ready for this. Most relationships are not built to withstand it. And so, when she speaks those words, when she steps into her sovereignty, the bond breaks, not because it was weak, but because it was never meant to last. It was meant to initiate. To serve as a vessel for her awakening, and, if he is willing, for his. And if he survives the 7 days? If he does not run back to distraction, to another woman, to the illusion of control? Then, on the 8th day, something new begins. Not a chase. Not a plea. But a question, whispered in the dark. Who am I, when no one needs me? And in that question, simple, devastating, sacred, lies the birth of the real man. That question, who am I when no one needs me? Is not asked with pride. It is not a philosophical musing. It emerges from the raw, hollow silence of a man who has just realized that his entire identity was built on sand. Not malice, not failure, but a quiet, devastating awareness. He was never loved for who he was. He was needed for what he did. And now, with no one to fix, no one to rescue, no one to perform for, he stands naked before himself. Not a king. Not a provider. Not a savior. Just a man. And for the first time, he does not know how to breathe. This is the moment Carl Jung called nigredo, the blackening. The necessary descent into darkness before any true transformation can occur. It is not depression. It is not weakness. It is the psyche's way of saying, you have been living a lie. Now you must die to it. And like all deaths, it is painful. The ego fights. It sends waves of denial, she'll come back. I don't need her either. I'm better off alone. But beneath the bravado, there is a deeper current, grief. Not for her, but for the self he never knew. The boy who wanted to be seen, not praised. The man who longed to be held, not admired. The soul that craved intimacy, not conquest. And in the stillness of his collapse, something ancient begins to stir. The anima, the inner feminine, rises from the depths of his unconscious, not as a woman, but as a presence. Soft. Knowing. Unhurried. She does not speak in words. She speaks in dreams. In sudden tears. In the unbearable beauty of a sunset he never noticed before. She is the part of him that feels, that intuits, that surrenders. The part he was taught to bury, to call weak, to silence beneath logic and control. And now, with no outer woman to project his longing onto, she turns inward. She becomes his guide. This is not sentimentality. This is psychological necessity. Without the anima, a man is not whole. He is half a soul. A mind without a heart. A fortress without a home. And so, in the 7 days of his breakdown, he begins to feel, not emotions as reactions, but as revelations. He feels the weight of his father's absence. The sting of his mother's unmet needs. The loneliness of being the strong one. He feels the years he spent numbing himself with work, with sex, with success, anything to avoid the quiet terror of being alone with himself. And in that feeling, something shifts. Not instantly. Not dramatically. But like a tectonic plate deep beneath the earth, the foundation of his being begins to move. You see this, don't you? Not just in him, but in yourself. The way you, too, have performed. The roles you've played to be loved. The parts of you you've buried because they were too much. Too intense. Too deep. Too wild. Too free. And when you finally stop, when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop shrinking, the collapse doesn't just happen in you. It happens in him. Because your wholeness is a mirror. And most men have never seen their own emptiness reflected so clearly. But here is the secret they do not teach. A woman does not gain power by taking it. She gains it by releasing it. By letting go of the need to be understood, to be chosen, to be returned to. Power is not in the chase. It is in the stillness after the chase ends. It is in the peace of a woman who no longer measures her worth by his attention. That peace is magnetic. Not because it draws him in, but because it reveals what was always missing, himself. And if he is willing, if he does not flee back to the world of noise and distraction, then on the 8th day, he does not come to her with promises. He comes with a question. Quiet. Humble. Raw. Who are you, when you don't need anyone? Not to fix. Not to win. But to know. And if she answers, it will not be with words. It will be with presence. With the unshakable calm of a woman who has faced her shadow and emerged not healed, but whole. A woman who does not need him. But if he has done his work, if he has descended into his own darkness and returned with humility, then perhaps, just perhaps, she will choose him. Not out of lack. Not out of fear. But from overflow. Because love that survives the fire of individuation is not a bond. It is a meeting. A recognition. Two souls who no longer demand completeness from each other, because they have found it within. And the woman who has walked this path? She does not wait. She does not wonder. She does not beg. She stands in her truth, silent, sovereign, free. There is a moment, rare, unrepeatable, when the soul sheds its old skin and steps into a silence so deep it no longer needs to be heard. It is not indifference. It is not coldness. It is the peace of a woman who has stopped bargaining with the world for love, for validation, for proof that she is enough. She does not leave relationships out of anger. She leaves them out of clarity. Not because she dislikes the man, but because she finally likes herself too much to play small any longer. And in that departure, not dramatic, not announced, not justified, she becomes something ancient, something primordial, the oracle. The one who speaks only when truth demands it. The one whose absence is a teaching. This is not revenge. This is reclamation. And when a man finally understands what he has lost, it is not her body he mourns. It is the mirror she held up to his soul. For the first time, he saw himself, not as a performer, not as a provider, but as a being capable of feeling, of softness, of surrender. And now that mirror is gone. He can no longer hide behind charm, behind success, behind the illusion of control. He is alone with the one person he has spent his life avoiding, himself. But if he stays in that aloneness, if he does not rush to replace her with another woman, another distraction, another achievement, then something extraordinary begins. The ego, once loud and commanding, starts to quiet. The anima, once buried beneath logic and ambition, begins to speak in whispers. You are not your job. You are not what you provide. You are not what you fix. You are simply here. And in that simplicity, a new kind of strength emerges, not the strength of dominance, but the strength of presence. Not the power to control, but the courage to feel. This is the death of the false self. The end of the persona that said, I am valuable because I am needed. And in its place, something fragile, tender, and real begins to grow, the self. Whole. Unperformed. Unashamed. You have felt this, haven't you? Not just in love, but in life. The exhaustion of being the one who always holds it together. The loneliness of being seen as strong while feeling shattered inside. The slow realization that no amount of external success can fill the void of internal emptiness. And then, finally, the decision to stop filling it. To stop chasing, stop explaining, stop proving. To sit in the silence and let the truth rise like a tide. That is where freedom begins. Not in a grand declaration. Not in a viral post. Not in a confrontation. But in a single breath, when you stop trying to be understood and start being. When you realize that your worth was never negotiable. It was only forgotten. And when you remember it, the world shifts. Not because others suddenly see you, but because you no longer need them to. This is the final stage of individuation, the integration of the shadow, the union of opposites, the coming home to oneself. It is not a destination. It is a state of being. A woman who has reached this place does not attract men. She reveals them. She does not seek love. She radiates it, quietly, effortlessly, without demand. And those who are ready, those who have faced their own darkness, will recognize her not as a partner to complete them, but as a soul to walk beside. But most are not ready. Most will break under the weight of her wholeness. They will mistake her peace for coldness, her silence for punishment, her independence for rejection. And they will leave, not because she pushed them away, but because they could not survive in the light of her truth. And that is as it should be. Because the woman who knows her worth does not chase. She does not beg. She does not shrink. She does not perform. She simply is. And from that being, everything else follows. She chooses, not out of fear, not out of lack, not out of loneliness, but from the fullness of her own soul. And when she chooses, it is not a plea for love. It is a declaration of it. The man who stays is not the one who promises forever. He is the one who has faced his own emptiness and returned with humility. The one who no longer needs her to feel whole, because he has found himself. And in that meeting, love is not a dependency. It is a celebration. Two sovereign souls, standing in their truth, choosing each other not to fill a void, but to share a light. And if he ever forgets? If he begins to slip back into old patterns of control, of performance, of emotional distance? She does not argue. She does not beg. She does not explain. She simply turns. And walks away. Again. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.